True Gay Crime contains coarse language, adult themes, and content that is violent and disturbing. If at any time you feel you need help, please refer to the toll-free crisis lines in the show notes. And welcome to another episode of True Gay Crime. I'm your host, Patrick Marano. As always. Imagine I was somebody else suddenly, or I went by a different name. My name is Charlie Benson. Charlie Benson. I have no idea where that came from or who that is. If there's somebody named Charlie... Actually, I'm going to Google him later. Charlie Benson. Maybe I'm supposed to reach out to him or something. Me and Charlie Benson are supposed to get together and do a project together. Who is this elusive Mr. Benson? And it's not Charles, it's Charlie Benson. Oh, maybe it's a woman. Charlie Benson. Ooh, yeah. I like it. I'm into it. Okay. So, on today's episode of True Gay Crime, we are covering Colin Ireland, aka the Gay Slayer. He was known in the tabloid press as London's Gay Slayer. Colin Ireland was a serial murderer wannabe who made the leap from morbid daydreams to multiple murder as a conscious, deliberate choice of lifestyle. So this guy's a little bit different than the other people that we've covered, and it's going to be very interesting as we go through the story and discover who this guy is and what makes him tick. Okay. So without further ado, let's get into the story because I believe that there is a lot of material to cover here. Sure. Let's jump right into Colin Ireland, a.k.a. the Gay Slayer. Opening story, please, and action. Sitting alone in his darkened flat with only the illuminated TV casting an eerie blue glow in the room, he crushed an empty beer can under his fist, tossed it on the ground, and got up from the broken armchair. The New Year's celebrations that came from the TV did nothing to lift his spirits. He grabbed another can from the fridge and made his way back to the armchair, reflecting on the past year, reflecting on his life. 1992 sucked, and 1993 wouldn't be any better. He grew up dirt poor, moved houses constantly, survived pedophile advances, had multiple brushes with the law, 2 failed marriages, and no career to speak of at 39 years old. He was no one, going nowhere. The only topic that interested him these days was the research and studying of his inspirations, men who killed not once, not twice, but enough to be classified as a serial killer. These men were famous. They were known. They had pulled it off. They were seen. They were someone. I could do that too, he thought to himself as the TV screamed back to him. 10, 9, 8. I could kill. I could be a serial killer. 6, 5. That'll show them. Then I'll be someone. I'll have done something. 3, 2, 1. Happy fucking New Year. Who is this man that made a New Year's resolution to become a serial killer? Let's go back and try to understand how someone could come to this. Colin Ireland was born March 16, 1954, to an unwed teenage mom whose partner took off when he discovered she was preggers. She gives birth in West Hill Hospital in Dartforth, Kent, and refuses to put the father's name on the birth certificate, and Colin Ireland never knows his real father's identity. His mother works a menial job with low wages and finds it difficult to support herself and her son, so she takes him to go live with her and her parents, and they stay there for 5 years until 1959, when his mother decides she needs space from the family and moves out. The next 6 years is a blur of moving house 9 times. His mother has no real employable skills and works odd jobs and part-time work. They bounce from county to county, even ending up in a camp of wooden huts for homeless women and children in Maidstone. They don't last long on their own, and they move back to the family home. Ireland's mom meets a new partner in 1961, and they move in together in Dartford for the next 3 years. She marries, and she changes her name from Ireland to Sacker. Sacker was a good father to Ireland, but that didn't make up for his inconsistent work, and the family suffers financially. Ireland, at 10 years old, and the family are evicted from their home due to non-payment of rent. He and his mom go back to the homeless shelter, and his stepfather goes to live with his parents. Of course, that's when his mom discovers she's pregnant again with her second kid. And again, despite not having a penny to her name, she wants to keep the baby. To make things easier financially, she sticks Ireland in foster care in Kent. Foster care goes by without any incident, and when the baby comes, his mom and stepdad move to a house in West Kingsdown and bring Ireland with them. But then Sacker, having enough of trying unsuccessfully to support his young family, ups and leaves them. Real nice. Talk about deadbeat. Ireland goes to 6 different primary schools and obviously has trouble making and keeping friends. He's always the new boy, thin, lanky, bow-legged, and easy to pick on. So he starts skipping class and avoiding school as much as he can, with his mother's blessing. When he does decide to go, he's always late, and he gets a good caning. Remember caning? They would just take a I don't remember. I'm not that old. They used to take canes and hit kids' hands. Wow, different time, man. In 1966, when he's 12, his mother meets another man. They marry, but Ireland refuses to take his last name and instead reverts back from Sacker to his mother's maiden name of Ireland. The small family moved to Sheerness in Kent, and they stay there for 5 years. This marriage lasts and gives the family a little breathing room financially. Thank God, finally. A break. It's around this time that Ireland goes through a period of being approached by older men for sex. Now, this is interesting because it's not once, it's not twice. 4 separate occasions, by his account, he's approached by older men in a sexual context. So the first time happened while he was working at the fairground. A man approaches him with a necklace that he's like, hey, I can give this necklace to your mother, or if you do some sex things with me, which is kind of weird. Why would you bring the mother into it too? Don't make me think of my mom. And you're like a pedophile who's accosting me for sex? Strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, this guy. Okay. The second time, he's 12 years old. He's in a public restroom, and he looks up and he sees a man peering over the cubicle wall, and that totally freaks him out. And the third time, when he's at the cinema, he's approached for sexual favors. And the fourth time, he was browsing a secondhand shop. He's approached by the man working at the shop, which is kind of strange. I'm just thinking, if you're going to commit this horrible crime, why would you do it in the place that you work or /own? I'm not saying that these things did not happen, but I just wonder what was in his orbit that he was attracting this kind of energy. Not once, not twice, 4 times, 4 separate occasions, very separate occasions, different people. What is going on there? There's something more for me that's going on there. Unless you live in a really shitty, what fucked up neighborhood do you live in that all the men are pedophiles? That doesn't compute for me. So there's something. I don't know what it is, but anyway. He says, although there's no physical contact, obviously, it leaves him with anger and a feeling of violation that won't go away. Obviously, that would be extremely traumatizing. So, in his teens, he is constantly in trouble with the law. In 1970, at 16 years old, he hates his life and wants to start fresh in London. He steals £4 in order to get there, but he's caught and sent to Fichton Manor School in Kent. So what that is, it's a school for boys with emotional problems. And he's teased by the other boys, and he hates it there. So he sets fire to... So I don't know why I'm laughing. I know why I'm laughing, because I know this story, because I've done the research and I know this story. This guy's such a loser, though. Everything, I'm just going to say it now, I'm just going to put it out there. Everything he tries to do / accomplish fails. He's just a huge failure at everything he tries. Okay, I'm just going to leave that there and then let you discover for yourself. It's a school for boys, okay? He's teased by the other boys. Obviously, he hates it there. So he sets fire to a student's belongings and he gets thrown out of that school. Homeless and penniless, he makes his way to London and at 17 years old starts to steal to survive. He's caught again and sent to Hollesley Bay, which is a reform school for youths with therapy and vocational training. He hates it there and manages to run away, but he's caught, of course, and sent to a more strict reform school to spend the rest of his time from 1971 to 1972. He serves 2 terms in Borstal Reformatory, after which he's rejected in a bid to join the French Foreign Legion. Now, I have heard of the French Foreign Legion, so I Googled it because I've heard of it before, but I don't know what it is. So here it is. It's a military service branch of the French army, which was established in 1831. The legionnaires are highly trained infantry soldiers, and the Legion is unique in that it's open to foreign recruits willing to serve in the French armed forces. So it's kind of cool. It's open to anybody from anywhere. And then they can sort of represent and fight on behalf of France. And actually, if there's this weird clause where if you get hurt during a battle and you shed blood for France, then like you're fast tracked to become a French citizen. So actually, if you're from a country you hate and you want to go live somewhere better, like France, let's say, join the French Foreign Legion if they'll take you. Because guess what? They rejected Colin Ireland. Why? Because he's a loser who doesn't accomplish anything. Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, so he wants to join the French Foreign Legion. They're like, I don't think so. Can you imagine? I wonder what the process is to go in. I mean, obviously there's some kind of criteria. I mean, you can't. It's not just open door policy. Anybody can come in. You know, there's probably some physical things and maybe a mental test. I don't know, but they rejected you. You know why? Probably because at this point he was already in trouble with the law, and they're like, no, you're trouble. See, they knew. Somebody should have stopped him at this point. Okay. He's released from the reformatory school, which is kind of like a prison. So yeah, he's released at 18, at which point he meets his first girlfriend, which I found it odd that, well, I guess he's been in these boys' schools, so he's been surrounded by boys, so he hasn't been able to meet any girls. He finally gets a girlfriend at 18. She says he's a sad sack of a man. So obviously that doesn't really work out. A couple of years later, in 1975, he's found guilty of 2 counts of burglary, stealing a car, and damage to property, and he gets 18 months in prison. He gets out in 1976. He moves to Swindon, where he meets his second girlfriend, and he has his first sexual relationship with a West Indian woman 5 years older than him and with 4 children. This I find fascinating. So here's a man, he's 22 years old, and this is only his second girlfriend, and his first sexual experience is with her. She's 5 years older than him and already has 4 children. What a strange hodgepodge of a situation that is. First of all, losing your virginity at 22? 22 is late. I'm not saying this isn't true. I'm just wondering why. I mean, I know he spent a lot of time in those boys' reform schools, but then in 1977, he's found guilty again. Like, this guy is just consistently in and out of prison. He's found guilty of demanding with menaces, which basically means give me your money or I'll hurt you. And then, so he gets 18 more months in jail. Then in 1980, he gets 2 more years for robbery. Then he gets 2 months for attempted deception, which is basically an unsuccessful crime that he tried to commit. A big surprise, he did something unsuccessfully. And then he gets 6 months for going equipped to cheat in 1985, which is, again, another unsuccessful crime. So, The fact that he goes to jail as often as a gay man goes to the gym tells me that he's comfortable there. This is kind of like his comfort zone, you know? It's what he knows. It's what I don't think his mind can even think outside of that context. Like, what is a normal life for him? What does that look like? It looks like going to prison. Anyway, because he's in and out of prison so often, finding steady work is tough. But he does odd jobs, including working as a volunteer fireman, a restaurant chef, a volunteer at a homeless shelter, and a bouncer at various bars, even a gay nightclub. But my only question is, if you're having trouble looking for work, I mean, volunteering is a noble thing to do, absolutely. But you need money to survive. I don't know how you're making money if you're volunteering at these places. You're not a real housewife of Orange County, like you need the money. In 1981, he meets Virginia Zammit. She's 9 years older than him, so he likes the older ladies, and has a 5-year-old daughter, and she's confined to a wheelchair from a car accident that left her paralyzed at age 24. They marry the next year and move to estate housing in Holloway. Ireland, having grown into himself and stood at 6'2", is known in the neighborhood as the Gentle Giant. They're happy for a while, but of course, You guessed it, he lands himself back in prison, and the couple divorce in 1987 after he admits to having an affair. Like, he didn't have sex until he was 22, and now he's cheating on his wife and having affairs? Okay. Things change. 2 years later, Ireland meets Janet Young, a pub landlady in Devon, with 2 kids. They all live above the pub, and in no time, they're getting married. 4 months into the marriage, the family goes to see Janet's parents in Margate. Ireland is like, hey, babe, I'm going to take the car and go to get a few things we forgot at the store. And she's like, okay, hon, hurry back. Supper's almost ready. He takes the car, withdraws a bunch of money from their account, and disappears. Needless to say, that marriage doesn't last long, and they divorce in 1991. Ireland moves to Southend-on-Sea in Essex, 40 miles east of London, and starts work at a homeless shelter, while being homeless himself, which is interesting. Maybe he was working there as a way to have somewhere to stay as well. But now we go a year into the job, and colleagues were making unfounded, but probably true, allegations, and he resigns. He starts feeling frustrated with his directionless life and the shitty jobs he's taking. Then, as we already know, in early 1993, at 39 years old, Ireland, defeated, frustrated, and angry, makes a New Year's resolution to become a serial killer. He studies their cases and is fascinated by them. He understands geographic profiling, which investigators use to find serial killers on the premise that they commit crimes within a certain radius of their home. So Ireland decides to go outside that radius for his victims and chooses London as his hunting ground. First, he has to choose his victim profile. Who could he easily lead astray? Who would be willing to go to a secure location with him? Who would be willing to be tied up and incapacitated? Who might not be missed for a while? Guess who? He knew from being a bouncer at a gay nightclub that a gay single man into bondage would be an easy target and have little sympathy from the public. I know you're frustrated with your life, but you made all those choices. And instead of growing a pair and applying yourself to something useful, like, hey, I'm just going to be a killer. Like, that's not one of the options. Your guidance counselor, at school isn't like, hey, Bob, looks like we've narrowed your options to veterinarian or serial killer. I don't know. That's a tough one. The animals are super cute, but there's not a lot of fame attached to that. Oh, gosh, it's such a toss-up. The Colehorn pub in Brompton Road, West London at the time has a reputation in the gay community as a place where you can easily pick someone up for the night. Men wore color-coded handkerchiefs to indicate their sexual proclivities, making cruising easy. Leave it to gay men to always figure out the best way to do something. So, dressed in his best S&M master dominant partner I'm a power top drag, on March 8th, 1993, Ireland heads out to the Colehorn pub where he meets 45-year-old choreographer Peter Walker. Walker notices Ireland and approaches him. They chat and leave the bar together to Walker's flat in Battersea. At the flat, Ireland makes sure that Walker's dogs are locked in an adjoining room before he ties him up, gags him with knotted condoms, and ties him to the bed. At this point, Walker thinks he's getting into some kinky action when Ireland pulls out his murder bag. In it, he's got a small cord, a knife, a pair of gloves, and a change of clothes. With Walker unable to move, Ireland uses his belt and fist to pummel his victim, then puts a plastic bag over his head and suffocates the man. Walker struggles and eventually submits. Once he's dead, Ireland takes a lighter to his pubic hair to see what it smells like. Then he takes his time cleaning up all the mess. He tidies up, removing incriminating evidence, and finds Walker's HIV medication. Ireland, discovering the meds, goes mental, and he starts shoving condoms in the man's mouth and nose. This part I don't really understand because, did you ask about his HIV status? I mean, did you guys talk about it? And also, you are not having sex with these men. So what does it matter? What do you care? Like, you're not even touching them that way. I don't understand why that's such a tipping point for him. Like, what's the issue? I mean, you went there to kill him anyway, not to propose to him. Then Ireland takes 2 teddy bears and puts them in a 69 position beside the body. He thinks leaving in the middle of the night might look suspicious, so he sticks around till morning watching TV. Then, hidden under the safety of the morning rush hour, he travels back home, throwing his murder clothes out the window of the train. God, I hate littering, honestly. Then 2 days later, Ireland calls The Sun, which is a London tabloid, saying, Hi, I'm calling because I'm concerned about some dogs that were left in a flat with a dead man. You see, it was my New Year's resolution to murder a human being. Here's the address if you'd like to make sure the dogs are okay. I'd appreciate it. So when the police go to release the dogs, naturally they find Walker's dead body. Now, the police assume it's an S&M sex game gone way too far, and they go to the gay community for help, but the community basically tells them to fuck off for two huge reasons. Number one, the cops do not have a good reputation with the LGBTQ plus community, since gay cases many times often go ignored or unresolved. Number two, the day before Walker's death, S&M between consenting adults was ruled illegal in the United Kingdom, so no one wants to get involved in this case because they don't want to get implicated or worse, prosecuted and then sent to jail. So I looked into it, and the case that made S&M illegal in the UK was R.V. Brown from 1993. And in the case, 5 men engaged in consenting sadomasochistic sexual acts, and the acts were uncovered by an unrelated police investigation. In the appeal, the participants, a group of largely professional men who took great care to ensure their activities were safe, argued that they had a right to engage in these private sexual activities. They maintained that no harm had been caused, that there had been consent, and that their use of code words and sterilized equipment made what they were doing safe. So the key issue facing the court at the time was whether consent was a valid defense to assault in these circumstances, to which the court answered no. And they made S&M illegal. So, because of this groundbreaking case in the UK, if you consensually spank someone and you leave a bruise, you have committed a criminal offense and you could go to jail. This is true. These are facts. Of course, academics, campaigners, and even the bodies in charge with reviewing the law have argued that this principle goes way too far into the private lives of individuals, but it still stands to this day. Okay, back to the story. 2 months after the Walker murder, Ireland returns to the Coleherne pub on May 28, 1993. He finds 37-year-old librarian Christopher Dunn, who tells Ireland he likes to be dominated, and he invites him back to his flat in Whittlestone. They watch an S&M porn, and then Ireland tells Dunn to go get ready. When Ireland goes to the bedroom, Dunn is naked except for a studded belt and harness. Dunn lies face down and allows himself to have his feet bound and hands handcuffed. Ireland beats and tortures Dunn, holding a lighter to his testicles, then suffocates him with cloth in his mouth. Now, because he's unemployed, Ireland starts to steal from his victims. So before killing Dunn, he forces him to give him his bank card and PIN number. He cleans up the scene, stays till it's safe to leave, and withdraws £200 from Dunn's account. Then he tosses his gloves and boots like before. So this is now his MO. This is how he does it. 2 days later, a friend finds Dunn's body, and the police think, these guys are at it again. They should really be more careful. And they don't connect the two murders. That is until they realize that cash was withdrawn from Dunn's card, and Ireland calls the popo anonymously to say, hey douchebags, I can't believe you didn't link the two murders. And they were murders, BTW. Ireland only waits 6 days this time before finding his next victim at the Coleherne pub on June 4th, 1993. This guy's a creature of habit. Like, now he's got his MO down. He's got his system, right? 35-year-old Perry Bradley III, the son of a serving U.S. congressman and himself a businessman from Texas. The men go back to Bradley's Kensington flat. Oh, he lives in a nice neighborhood. Where Ireland is like, hey, let's do S&M. And Bradley's like, I'm not really into that sort of stuff. But Ireland is like, hey, we have to do some S&M. That's how I get off. So Bradley's like, okay, fine, just a little. Bradley gets tied face down on the bed with a noose around his neck. Ireland immediately demands his card and PIN number, threatening torture if he doesn't comply. Bradley says, I'll go with you to the ATM and we'll withdraw money and I'll give it to you. But Ireland is like, nice try, buddy. Give me your PIN number or I'll torture the fuck out of you. And by the way, after you give me the number, I need you to go to sleep. He actually asks him to go to sleep after giving him the card and the PIN number, and somehow Bradley does go to sleep. I'm assuming there's some kind of drugs involved in this because you're tied up with a noose and somebody's already said that they're going to torture you if you don't give them the financial information for them to steal money from you, and then they tell you to go to sleep and you do. I just think of all the people that have trouble sleeping on the planet, like people that, download apps like Calm and have to meditate, and really they have a whole ritual before bed and they have trouble sleeping. Like, this is a common thing. People have trouble sleeping. But this guy just falls asleep at the drop of a hat. I mean, worse than that, in the presence of somebody who's threatened to torture you and you're tied up and they're going to steal from you, and he asks you to fall asleep and you do? So there's something up with that. I think it's drugs. Once Bradley's asleep, of course, Ireland starts to tighten the noose slowly until the man dies. Which, again, wouldn't he have woken up? So I'm thinking there's some kind of drugs there. Ireland places a doll on the dead body in a sex position, and he starts his cleanup routine. In the morning, he swipes 100 pounds from Bradley, and then he goes to the ATM to get 200 more. The police don't connect the murders since they were committed in different areas, and anyway, it was probably just, quote, those gays and their sex games gone wrong. But Ireland calls the police again and says, I did the American. You've got some good leads on my identity from clues at the scene. I've studied the FBI manual. I have got the book. I know how many you have to do to be a serial killer. With the mention of the FBI manual, a transatlantic call is made to ex-FBI agent Robert Ressler. He's the co-author of the textbook Sexual Homicide in the FBI Crime Classification Manual. Ressler cooperates with Scotland Yard on a profile for the elusive gay slayer, but as usual, police would need a lucky break to place their man in custody. At this point, Ireland is starting to lose control. The murders were happening faster and more frequent, so he calls the police and says, are you still interested in the death of Peter Walker? Why have you stopped the investigation? Doesn't the death of a homosexual man mean anything? I'll do another. I have always dreamed of doing the perfect murder. I guess I should have been doing a British accent the whole time, but I mean, as you know, my British accent is awful, so it's better that I don't. By now, Ireland was frustrated with the police. Well, yeah, everyone is frustrated with the police. They're not putting two and two together, and even Ireland keeps calling them and like laying it out for them, and they still can't. I get it. It's a tough job. Okay, and I wasn't there, so Patrick, just keep reading the story. Okay. The police were not linking the first three murders together, and he wasn't getting the publicity he wanted. Dude, if you want publicity, you should have gone after wealthy white women. He wanted to be famous, so only 3 days after his last murder, he's at it again. June 7th, 1993, he goes back to the Coleherne and meets 33-year-old Andrew Collier and goes back to Collier's Dalton flat, where Ireland is like, hey, can I tie you up and bind you to the bed? And Collier is like, sounds good. Once he's bound, Ireland says, now I need your bank card and PIN number, thanks. But Collier refuses, and Ireland strangles him with a noose. During his routine cleanup, Ireland finds Collier's HIV meds. He goes nuts again and starts burning parts of Collier's body, and he strangles his cat to death. Then, just to humiliate them, he puts a condom on Collier's penis, and he puts one on the cat's tail. Then he positions the cat with its mouth on Collier's penis, and its tail in Collier's mouth. Ireland waits till morning to leave with the rush hour crowd and swipes 70 pounds as he goes. When police find Collier, they finally put two and two together and link Walker and Collier since the scenes were similar. They start to suspect they have a serial killer. Didn't Ireland already call them several times and say that? Right? Police get a lucky break when they lifted a set of prints from Collier's window frame that belonged to Ireland. On June 12, 1993, 5 days after his last murder, Ireland again calls the police and says, hey guys, I killed 4 men so far. You got to stop me from killing more. And then he calls the Battersea police and asks them, are you guys still interested in the Walker murder? Because I'm going to do it again. And I want to do the perfect murder. I mean, he's not even a good serial killer. Like, he's literally failed at everything in his life and he can't even do this right, honestly. And what the fuck is a perfect murder? Isn't the perfect murder a murder you get away with? And his whole agenda is actually to be known for these murders? So, what's the perfect murder? For him. Okay. That same night, Ireland heads out to the Coleherne pub and meets 41-year-old Maltese chef Emmanuel Spiteri. Ireland, of course, had read that to be considered a serial killer, you have to kill 5 people, and this was his number 5. So, the pair go back to Spiteri's flat in Catford. And when they walk in the door, Spiteri is immediately tied to the bed with a noose around his neck, and Ireland demands his bank card and PIN number. Spiteri is strangled with the noose and killed. Ireland follows his trademark cleanup routine, watches some TV, and before leaving the next morning sets a fire in the bedroom he's hoping burns the whole block down. But again, he's such a loser, he can't get anything right, and the fire goes out without even leaving the bedroom. The next day, he calls the police and tells them, "Hi guys, me again. Listen, you're going to want to head down to South London to where there was a fire because there's a body there waiting for you. And I've read books. I know you need 5 murders. Well, this is my 5th. I guess I'm a serial killer now. I'll stop killing and probably won't have to do it again." Like, oh my God. And by the way, in his typical loser fashion, it's not 5. You need 3. 3 murders, according to the FBI manual, is a serial killer, not 5. Like, he doesn't even have his information correct. So, of course, the police don't know what he's talking about because there is no fire. The fire went out in the bedroom. So they don't even know what he's talking about. But a couple days later, Spiteri's landlady calls the police to report his death. So finally, the police connect all of the 5 murders, and the word gets out that there's a serial killer targeting gay men who could strike any time. This is where Scotland Yard gets involved. Now, you might know this. I actually didn't. I was like, what's the difference between Scotland Yard and the police? Are they Scottish? Is it some branch of the police that's like this like Scottish militia, and they're just like highly trained ninja warriors? Actually, the story is a lot more boring than that. The London Metropolitan Police, the back entrance of the building was on a street called Great Scotland Yard. And it was the back entrance, but it kind of became the front entrance. And so the name stuck. Where are you going? We're in Scotland Yard. So the name kind of stuck. And that's basically it. Like, it's kind of like Wall Street in the financial district in New York, right? Wall Street means like the whole sort of financial district named after the street. So it's not as interesting as I thought it was, but... So, Scotland Yard puts out TV pleas asking for the killer to give himself up. Does that ever work? Does that ever work when they're like, they ask, somebody to give themselves up? It must. I mean, it exists. Detectives discovered that Spiteri was with a heavyset man that they see from blurry images picked up from a security camera. So they published these photos, and the gays come out of the woodwork saying that they had meetings with someone who matches that description. There's publicity campaigns, press conferences, and Detective Superintendent Ken John says 5 gay men have been murdered and their cases are linked. John asked the gay community to be on alert and to keep tabs on their friends. And for some reason, the police suspect that the killer has AIDS and he's out for some kind of revenge. So I'm not sure why. I guess they saw that somebody was killing gay men specifically, and then they just have to link it to AIDS, which is kind of ironic because... Ireland was getting pissed off when he found out that they were HIV positive, and then he was like humiliating them even more, even though they were dead. So kind of a weird twist there. But on June 17th, 1993, John made a direct appeal via the media to the killer to give himself up, saying he wanted to talk to him and offer him help. Again, does that ever work? On June 19th, police hand out flyers at the London Gay Pride Festival where 50,000 people attend, appealing for anyone with information about the murders to come forward. Then a psychologist, Dr. Barry, gets involved to draw up a profile of the killer. He says that the killer is fueled by violent fantasies, but the murder is never as good as the fantasy, so he's driven to keep killing again. He also says that it has nothing to do with AIDS, which is nice to get that weird theory off the table. On June 24th, 1993, the police release a description of the man they saw on camera with Spiteri, white, male, age 30 to 40, over 6 feet tall, clean-shaven, a full to fattish face, short, dark brown hair, and dirty, discolored teeth. I mean, that's pretty specific. I thought it was a blurry photo. How did they know he's got dirty, discolored teeth? Anyway, it's not a pretty picture. How did he attract so many guys so easily? I mean, I have good-looking friends who complain they can't get tail. And meanwhile, this, man with dirty, discolored teeth and not sounding very attractive is just reeling them in every time he goes out to the pub. Okay. From this image, they were able to produce an EFIT, which is an electronic facial identification technique, a computer-generated likeness based on verbal descriptions. And a week later, on July 2nd, 1993, police release a picture of the man with Spiteri. They appeal for him to come forward for questioning, as if confirming that the lines of communication are open. The next day, police receive over 40 calls, some of which were from men saying that they had seen or talked to the man in the Coleherne pub. Then on July 13th, 1993, Ireland goes to his solicitor in Southend-on-Sea and tells him, "So, that's me on the night with Spiteri on the security camera, but I didn't kill him. I left him at his place with some other guy." Which, again, I don't understand, because I thought the whole purpose of him becoming a serial killer was that he could make a name for himself and be infamous, but now he's at the point where he's about to get caught and now he's denying the murders? What's your angle, dude? This information, combined with the fingerprints Ireland had left on Collier's window ledge, was enough for him to be arrested and charged with Collier's murder on the 21st of July, 1993. And 2 days later, he's charged with Spiteri's murder on July 23rd. Ireland is sent to prison, and he continues to maintain his innocence. Again, why? I thought this is what you wanted. Okay, there's no trial since, while he's in prison, Ireland confesses on August 19th to the murders of 5 gay men. He gives police a detailed description of how he committed each murder, never showing any emotion the whole time. Freak. In this confession, Ireland wants 4 things absolutely clear. 1, that he was never under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time of the murders. 2, that he was not gay or even bisexual. 3, that he did not undress or engage in any sex acts with his victims and had no sexual thrill from the murders. So, dude, why do you care if they're HIV positive then? Why is that so frustrating for you? Why was that such a... You were there to kill them anyway. Like, why does their HIV status matter? Okay, number 4, he says that he has no grudge against the gay community and that he chose them because they're easy targets. He says he was fueled by extreme male deviancy that triggered his hate that started back when he was a kid and his brushes with pedophiles. He says that they are deviants and his victims were deviants because they were into S&M. They just happened to be gay. He says, "I rid society of vermin and deserve recognition as a superior person." Also saying, "I robbed those I killed to finance my killings because I was unemployed at the time and needed funds to travel to and from London to hunt for victims." Psychologists see the strategic placing of items related to childhood on the victim's body, like the teddy bears and the doll and the whole cat situation, and they see that as symbolic of Ireland's abhorrence at the loss of innocence. The next day, he's taken to the Old Bailey. The Old Bailey! The famous court in London. We covered that with Dennis Nilsson on a previous podcast. Everyone goes to the Old Bailey, where he's charged with the murders of Walker, Dunn, Bradley, Collier, and Spiteri, and he's sentenced to 5 life imprisonments, 1 for each murder. The judge, Mr. Justice Sachs, said he was exceptionally frightening and dangerous, adding, "To take 1 human life is an outrage, to take 5 is carnage. In my view, it is absolutely clear you should never be released." So even though he said that he was done killing, he wasn't, because apparently while he's in prison, Ireland strangles and kills his cellmate, who's a convicted child killer. I wonder if he killed him because he's a child killer, or if they just got into some kind of altercation. I don't know. No charges are laid on him since there is no harsher penalty under British law than serving life sentence without parole. But he is transferred to a maximum security prison in Cambridgeshire. Like, why wasn't he already in a maximum security? Like, he killed 5 people. Doesn't that warrant maximum security? Anyway, he's transferred there. They are able to keep a closer eye on him, and he gets his own cell. Sounds like an upgrade. Now I got my own cell? The cherry on the sundae of what a loser this guy is that there's no book written or film made of his story. All he wants to be known is for something, and he's not even getting the full treatment that others get. So what Ireland really wanted was recognition, and once he had committed enough murders to qualify as a serial killer, he was ready to be caught and his story be known. Also, Since Ireland had studied serial killing by reading Whoever Fights Monsters by FBI agent Robert Ressler, it was suggested that the book be pulled from the shelves. Of course, Ressler counters that by saying, if a person is going to commit murder, my book could not be blamed, which I agree. And so ends the story of a pathetic man who failed at everything he tried and turns to murder as a last-ditch effort for recognition. The Call in Ireland, a.k.a. the Gay Slayer story. This guy, I mean, just next level of just loser stupidity. I feel like he's not, okay, how should I say this? You know how serial killers are like, there's an urge in me. I can't get away from it. I can't avoid it. I can't fight it. It just takes over. And there's this just kind of like, it's just, they don't have any control over it. And it's just something that takes them over, right? This case is kind of like not that at all. It's kind of like he just decided, hey, this is something that I could do because what I have been doing isn't working for me. It's like he's doing all these petty crimes and he keeps, doing time in prison, but then he gets out and then he tries for a normal life by meeting somebody and marrying them really quick, but then he ends up stealing their money and running away and cheating on or whatever. Like, it's just, he's his own, he just keeps shooting himself in the foot. And it's almost like he told himself, instead of me keep shooting myself with these tiny little BB gun pellets, I'm just going to take a real gun and point it somewhere better on myself. Right? It's almost like he dug himself into this hamster wheel cycle of crime, but always petty enough that he keeps getting out after a couple of years. And I think he just got so worn down by this never ending in and out that he's like, okay, I need to stop the madness. And instead, he had two choices there. I mean, okay, listen, I got it. If you have all this prison stuff on your record and it's going to be hard to be employed, but there's ways to rehabilitate. There's ways. And that was a turning point. That New Year's Eve, he's 39 years old, was a turning point for him. He could have chosen two paths. Well, he could have stayed on his same path and in and out of prison for the rest of his life, but he could have really put in an effort and tried to go straight, for lack of a better word, or just go off the deep end and go nuts and, I guess, get what he really wants, which is recognition for something. I mean, talk about the lazy way out too. Like, just, I'm not going to work for anything and be proud of anything. I'm just going to take the easy way out and do this horrible, horrible thing. Can we talk about the fact that he didn't have sex till he was 22? There's something up there. I wonder, was there something inside him? Is he on the scale somewhere? Was he fighting with his inner homo on some level? And he specifically said, I'm not gay and I'm not bisexual. Why throw bisexual in there? Who said anything about being bisexual? Oh, wait, you brought it up. There's something there. There's more there than just black and white, like I'm a virgin till I'm 22. And then his relationships with those women afterwards were always very special. They weren't what you would expect. Like the first one, she's older. She has 4 kids of her own. I mean, and then there's another one. She's in a wheelchair. She has a kid of her own. Then the other one has kids of her own. It's almost like he was looking for an instant family or something. And those were his attempts at a normal life. And they were just not gonna work for him. It just was not enough. The whole S&M thing. First of all, can you believe that S&M is illegal? It's illegal. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's crazy to me. I didn't know. It depends on the country. So country to country, it's different. Everybody has different rules. But okay, let's just speak about the UK specifically because this is a UK case. It's illegal. And of course, people are fighting it. They're saying that it's a, you're coming into my bedroom and everything. But then the courts are like, yeah, but you're inflicting harm on people, even if it's consenting. Wow. Where do you land? I want to hear from you. I would love to hear from you. Send me an email, truegaycrime@gmail.com. Where do you sit on the S&M being illegal? Did they go too far? I was going to say, is it far enough? But it's illegal. That's how much further can you go? You can go to prison. What are your thoughts on the subject? I might have a bigger opinion if I was into it. But it's never been a part of my lifestyle, so I don't know. I of course, the courts should not be in our bedrooms. Hello, fuck off. I just wonder sometimes, I don't know. No. But if it's consenting, what can you do? Two consenting people can do whatever they want, period. Get out of my life. You have no right here, So the whole S&M thing, it's very Bruce MacArthur from episode 2 of this podcast where, I was bouncing around the idea, how do we do this safely? Because a lot of times the thrill is, doing it with somebody who we don't know. But then look at the risks. It's like this merry-go-round, because it's like, well, you want the excitement of it being somebody new, but it's such risky behavior that it's such risky behavior, you know what I mean? But then, in the case of, for example, Bruce MacArthur, he had known some of his victims for a long time. They had played for years with S&M and BDSM and this sort of like bondage and tying up. Why would you assume that somebody you've been playing with for years is now going to kill you? You wouldn't. You would trust. This is the person that you do trust. I don't know I don't know where the line is for that. I don't know. How do you do S&M safely? Or is that an oxymoron? I don't know. I cannot solve this in the span of this podcast. I am just here to throw out ideas and questions which have no answers. I would love to hear from you on this subject because I think it's fascinating and I don't know the answer and I love answers. But I love to hear both sides of everything. And I don't have a firm opinion on this because I get it. Do your thing. This is what you like. And I don't believe the courts should be in your bedroom when it's consenting adults. Hey, listen, so if you like this content, I've started a Patreon page where you can go and become a patron and help give me a little ease in my creative process. If you're interested in that, there's a link in the show notes where you can participate. Oh, and another thing that really helps me out is tell a friend about the podcast. Word of mouth is my best friend. The sources I used for this episode are Wikipedia, Murderpedia, and thesun.co.uk. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next episode of True Gay Crime. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to find the True Gay Crime Facebook page and follow us on Instagram at True Gay Crime. And we'd love to hear from you. Do you have an LGBTQ crime story from your city? You can send your story to truegaycrime@gmail.com, and I'll share it on a future episode of the show. Did you know you can subscribe, rate, and review True Gay Crime on Apple Podcasts? It would mean everything to me if you did, because it helps me create content you like, and it lets Apple know to share it with more people. Thank you for listening. And remember, always look behind you, lock your doors, tell someone where you're going, and look out for each other.
Why can't we all just get along?